What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so we've been dealing with this situation for a pretty good little while now with this deportation flights with Tren de Aragua. You've got this gang that infiltrated the United States, and these activist judges think they have the authority to tell Donald Trump that he can't deport terrorists, for crying out loud. And it's been this whole thing. It's like, what are we getting into here? We are at administrative civil war. That's the point we are at, right? It's not like people on a battlefield shooting guns at each other. Of course, it's nothing of the sort, but it's these activist judges trying to assert their authority, and I believe in this instance they definitely overreached. I've poured over the Alien Enemies Act as much as I could, trying to look up context and everything else surrounding this Alien Enemies Act. So I'm going to bring you guys a news article from today, kind of dealing with this whole situation as it's ongoing, and then we're going to read in depth into the Alien Enemies Act to see exactly if I've been telling the truth, which, spoiler alert, yeah, and so is Donald Trump. But let's get into this thing right quick. Check this out, y'all. Judge in Alien Enemies Act case defends ruling ahead of key appeals court hearing. Now, to be honest with you, after going in depth on the Alien Enemies Act, none of this should exist outright. Just, I'll say that right from the jump, and I will also say that the corporate press is absolutely manipulating everything on this. Right, let's break this first, just this first paragraph. It's crazy, y'all. It's got several manipulations in. Check this out. The judge presiding over the Alien Enemies Act case on Monday denied the government's request to lift his hold on deportations under the rarely used wartime law, despite President Donald Trump's repeated attacks on him and his order. Now, just to give you some context as to where the corporate press is coming from here and as to the manipulations we are seeing, they're all over the place. Right, like right off the jump, it says the government's request to lift his hold on deportations. That would insinuate to you, the reader, that this judge has the authority to stop Donald Trump from deporting these terrorists, just right off the jump. Then they jump to under the rarely used wartime law, which would also make you think that, hang on, we're not at war, are we? This is a wartime law. What is Donald Trump doing? He's violating the Constitution. It's a crisis. No, we'll get into that one in a little while under the actual Alien Enemies Act. And then they go on to say, despite President Donald Trump's repeated attacks. What do you mean by repeated attacks? He's made statements. That's it. He said the guy should be impeached for overstepping his authority. Those are not attacks. Those are statements of fact. Denying the government's order to vacate his rulings, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg found that the Venezuelan nationals the administration wants to deport under the law should most likely be given the opportunity to challenge allegations that they're members of the Tren de Aragua gang first. But hang on just a second. Under the Alien Enemies Act, as we'll get to, they don't get to bring that to court at all. Donald Trump has the constitutional authority to summarily judge these people as enemy aliens and deport them. But once again, we'll get into that when we get to that part. Let's keep going, though. The decision came just hours before a federal appeals court was set to hear arguments that the deportation should be allowed to continue while it considers the government's appeal of Boasberg's ruling. Trump has repeatedly attacked Boasberg for his March 15th emergency temporarily halting deportations stemming from the Trump's invocation of the law, which had only been used before during declared wars. The president said in a post on his Truth social media platform that Boasberg is doing everything in his power to usurp the power of the presidency and doesn't mind if criminals come into our country. Once again, that is not an attack. This is what they are posing as their evidence of an attack. That's what happened. And that is exactly what this judge wants to do. Like, think about that for a second. How is that an attack when the judge ordered Donald Trump to turn the planes around and bring those terrorists back to the country? I'm just saying. Boasberg did not mention the Trump post in his ruling Monday, but did note that his ruling only stayed deportations under the AEA and doesn't bar people from being detained under the act or deported under other authorities. In other words, he's basically saying that these guys most definitely could be deported under different laws. He's just challenging this one. But, this is one of those things like, okay, so if Trump would have tried to deport them under a different law, then they would still be challenged. It's like, oh my goodness, these people are just insane, if you ask me. It is important to stress once again that the order was narrow. It prevented defendants from only being removed the plaintiff class on the sole basis of the proclamation. In other words, the order did not prevent defendants from removing anyone to include members of the class through other immigration authorities, he wrote, adding that member of Tren de Aragua are deportable under other statutes since Trump designated the gang a foreign terrorist organization. So basically, what he's trying to say here is that he should have used a different law. But once again, as I bring up, do you think that would have mattered at this point? Right? They are mad because under the Alien Enemies Act, once again, like I said, Donald Trump has the plenary power to summarily judge these people as terrorists, which he did do that. That is a constitutional power of the president, so no breaking of laws there, no constitutional crisis there, and deport these people with no hearing whatsoever. Right? Normally, a deportee gets to go to court to make sure that they're not criminal, to make sure they are criminal aliens. They say, are you a citizen? No, you're not. Well, then get out. Blah, 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 blah. If they overstayed a visa, there may be some recourse on that. But for the most part, one of these deportation hearings is just to make sure that these people, they want to make sure the court goes through due process to prove with beyond a shadow of a doubt these people are not U.S. citizens. That law is meant to protect us, you and I. It is not meant to protect the criminal aliens, for crying out loud. The order also did not require defendants to release a single person held in their custody, even individuals held only on the basis of the proclamation, the judge added. Yep, because the judge has no authority to say otherwise. And it did not even prevent defendants from apprehending non-citizens under the authority of the proclamation or any other law for that matter, because the judge doesn't have that authority. Once again, that sole responsibility lies within the executive branch, under the executive. What his order did put limits on was deporting alleged gang members to a notoriously dangerous El Salvador prison without allowing them to contest that they're involved with the gang, as the 5 plaintiffs in the case have done. Doesn't matter. Once again, like I said, but we'll get into that. The judge suggested the government had acted in bad faith in an effort to avoid such hearings. I'm sorry. All the rules and the language under the Constitution are there. But once again, we'll get to that. He noted 2 planes carrying deportees took off on March 15th, despite the government's knowing about the emergency hearing on the issue before the judge, and called it a move that implied a desire to circumvent judicial review. Once again, this would imply that they have authority to impose a judicial review for these deportations. But they don't. So once again, the corporate press and this judge is trying to manipulate you into believing that Donald Trump violated the Constitution, but he absolutely did not. But once again, the proof is coming. The government knew as of 10 a.m. on March 15th that the court would hold a hearing later that day, and the most reasonable interference is that it hustled people onto those planes in the hopes of evading an injunction or perhaps preventing them from requesting the habeas hearing to which the government now acknowledges they are entitled, the judge wrote, but they are not entitled to that. The plaintiff claimed that many of the deportees on the 2 flights were not affiliated with the gang, which the government denies. Once again, this is not up for debate, by the way. Once again, Donald Trump has the authority to summarily judge these people enemy aliens. It doesn't matter if they're in the gang or not. As the government itself concedes, the awesome power granted by the act may be brought to bear only on those who are in fact alien enemies, the judge wrote. Because the named plaintiffs dispute that they are members of Tren de Aragua, they may not be deported until a court has been able to decide the merits of their challenge, he added. Nor may any members of the provisionally certified class be removed until they have been given the opportunity to challenge their designations as well. They are entitled to individualized hearings to determine whether the act applies to them at all, he wrote. But once again, the language under the act does not do this. Now, you could make the argument that maybe there should be some sort of injunction to make sure that these people really are enemy aliens. However, these people were not just rounded up just randomly. These people were already caught for doing crimes. They were already sitting in jail. They were known Tren de Aragua gang members. This is why the deportations just flew right out the door. Because he invokes the Alien Enemies Act and boom, there you go. There is no recourse for these people. They get booted out. They are definitely non-citizens. And they are definitely Venezuelan, right? And sure, we might not be at war with these people, but under the act, Donald Trump proclaimed that they came to this country on the basis that Maduro, the president of Venezuela, sent them here, which he did. That's fact. But let's get into the Alien Enemies Act right quick and break all of this down. All right, check this out, y'all. I know I've done this once before, but it was kind of on an abbreviated basis. I didn't go through the whole thing, so let's go through the whole thing. Check this out. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798 is a wartime measure that authorizes the president during a declared war or in the event of an invasion or predatory incursion perpetrated or threatened by any foreign nation or government to issue regulations directing the conduct of or otherwise restraining citizens or nationals of the hostile nation or government. It was enacted as part of a set of national security measures known as the Alien and Sedition Acts, meant to address tensions involving the French Republic. These laws included the Alien Act, the Sedition Act, and the Alien Enemy Act. Of these laws, only the Alien Enemy Act remains in force. Now, let's get into a little bit of history with this thing. The Alien Enemy Act empowered the president to order out of the country any alien whom he judged to be dangerous to the peace and safety of the United States or suspected to be concerned in any treasonable or secret machinations against the government. The law was controversial, with opponents arguing that alien friends within the United States are entitled to due process of the law and the same protection from the government as citizens and should be tried in a court rather than summarily deported on suspicion of disloyalty. So what that says right there is that anybody who's not judged an alien enemy, they do have due process rights, and they do get all their rights under our Constitution, as a matter of fact. That's why all of these deportees, they have to go through this long, drawn-out process to be able to get deported, because they have to make their claim, blah, 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 blah. They have to go through the motions. You get it. But notice they said alien friends. That's not alien enemies. But let's keep going. Skeptics argued that such a measure could not be justified as a war power, even to prevent invasion. Of course, that's kind of deranged if you ask me. Proponents argue that aliens within the United States owe merely temporary allegiance to the United States and therefore not entitled to the same rights as citizens, and that all governments have the right to deport aliens who pose a danger. That's correct. I happen to agree with that. The Alien Enemy Act drew less debate. Neither James Madison nor Thomas Jefferson, who opposed the Alien Act, raised any concerns, any objections, and even some opponents of the Alien Act in Congress were careful to clarify that they had no qualms with respect to the Alien Enemies Act. The absence of objection to the Alien Enemy Act by the same generation that drafted the Constitution has been held by the Supreme Court to provide evidence of both the act's constitutionality and the prevailing understanding of the legal principle underlying it. That is, the fundamentally different position held by aliens on the basis of their formal allegiance to a government with which the United States is at war. Now, we are not currently at war, but also under that provision, it does mention at the direction of the president of said nation as an incursion, right? So we got all that, but judicial challenges, check this out. This is the interesting bit, if you will. Aliens affected by orders promulgated under the act did not have recourse to the courts to object to internment or removal orders on the grounds that the determination that they posed a threat was not made in accordance with due process under the Fifth Amendment. Basically saying they get no day in court, and this judge has no authority to impose an injunction under this law. So this judge, once again, like I've always been saying, you hear the left, you hear Democrats constantly yelling constitutional crisis, and I'm over here like they're the ones creating the constitutional crisis. And now we've got all the proof that we need. There you go, folks. The Democrats are creating a constitutional crisis and blaming it on Donald Trump. Once again, it's always with Democrats. Every accusation is a confession with these people. And this just blows my freaking mind because look what we're getting to in this country. These people are just taking step after step after step after step further and further into derangement with Donald Trump, and they are absolutely destroying themselves in the process. They're destroying their credibility. They're destroying the merits of any arguments they may have about trying to keep terrorists in this country. Right? Once again, they can't see the forest for the trees. They're blinded by their own rage against Donald Trump. They're ruling outside of the law, outside of the Constitution, and they don't seem to care about the rule of law in this country. Of course, we know that. Look at the Biden administration. Now, you might say, the Biden administration didn't have that many injunctions. Well, that's just because of squishy Republicans. That's all I'm going to say about that. They most certainly had the ability to bring these cases against everything Joe Biden did. If Democrats can do it, Republicans can do it. But the difference is Republicans can see that, what Joe Biden was doing falls under the Constitution. He does have authority to do certain things. We may not like it. But see, and that's the Democrats' order on this. When Donald Trump comes out with a statement saying, this guy should be impeached. And as we now learn, for very good reason, they say, that's not the right process. If you don't like a judge's order, you appeal it. Well, what if that judge is ruling outside of his authority to rule? What if this judge thinks in his lame brain, leftist cult mind over here that he believes he is on equal footing with the president of the United States, that he thinks because he was appointed by Obama, that he thinks he has the same amount of power as the executive branch. One man has the same power as the entirety of the executive branch. It's BS. These people are deranged nut jobs, and this is why I would fully back an impeachment of all of these judges. Not all of them, of course. Not all judges, of course. But these specific judges that are ruling outside of their authority against Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump is following the rule of law. He is following the Constitution. Just because, once again, you can flip that argument right back on them. Just because you don't like what's in the Constitution doesn't mean you get to challenge it based upon your feelings. Donald Trump is clearly acting within his constitutional duties here, and these people are trying to stop him. And once again, it all boils down to, why are they doing this? Like, you can't really believe that you get to the bare bones of the argument that they really want to keep terrorists in this country, and that they're really concerned that these people claimed to not be Tren de Aragua members. Like, does that even matter at this point? They came into this country illegally. They do not belong here. They do not deserve to be here. Reserve that right for people that came in the correct way. Once again, this is a situation where it's like everybody gets a participation trophy. It's like, no, I'm sorry. That's just ridiculous. You break our laws, bend our rules, spit in our face to come into this country, and then you expect to get the same rights as everybody else. You expect us not to want you to go back home, back to your country. Once again, these people, you come into this country, you commit crimes, you no longer have any sort of recourse to come back into this country the correct way. It just continually blows my mind the lengths they're willing to go to put on full display their derangement. Just outright blows my freaking mind. But I think I've rambled on for long enough on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. Crazy. It's getting crazy out there, y'all. And once again, we got this crisis in the court going on right now. And, should Donald Trump, even though knowing that this judge is ruling outside of his authority to make any sort of judgment, to impose any sort of injunction on these rulings, Donald Trump is obeying these injunctions, by the way. But the question to you guys is, should he? Should he listen to this guy? Should he stop these deportation flights? I don't understand exactly why that is. I mean, think about that for a second. What if you're just chilling at your house one day and your freaking neighbor comes over and tells you to move your car out of the driveway that's blocking his view to look down the street or something like that? You're going to tell that guy, hey, well, get off of my property and get back into your yard. Right? You're not going to be like, oh, well, let's work this out. What if I move? No, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that whatsoever. You're going to tell the guy to F off. Get out of here. I'm just saying. But we've got a situation here where these people, they want to hold on to their democracy, right? Don't think about that as the actual definition of democracy. It's democratic power, if you will. That's what that means when they say democracy. It's them being in power. It's them having captured all the institutions in this country, or at least the vast majority of institutions in this country. That's what they mean when they say democracy. We want democracy. It's absurd, y'all, and I'm sick and tired of hearing them talk about democracy. Because once again, that leads people to believe that they mean it definitionally, but they don't. They do not, absolutely do not. You can tell by their actions. But once again, getting into another rant. Y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.